So the return run then, as the drivers head down here. This is third and fourth gear, almost 100 miles an hour in the dry. Martin Batty using all of the circuit and a little bit more there. The judges allowed the drivers to use the curb, but nothing more. And Mike Marshall trying to close up on the back of the S15, but Martin Batty keeping the line nice and clean and through and out of the end of the judge section.
Quite late initiation there from Darren McNamara, giving Paul Smith the chance to catch up there as they entered into the first corner. Nice smooth transition into the second corner. Paul Smith just needs to reel in that A86 as much as possible around that final bend as Darren McNamara sticks to the outside line. Paul Smith just trying to catch him up as much as possible, but it's going to go into battle number. Next battle is Steve Moore versus Matt Carter. Look how much angle they both have into that first corner as they both transition now very close. Matt Carter seems to be all over Steve Moore around the first two corners, but looking very consistent there, both drivers, but Matt Carter just pushing.
Against Kieran Sinnott, all the way over from Ireland in the chase car. Paul Smith showing his consistency through that first section, opening the taps and smoking out Kieran Sinnott, who is going to hunt him down into that final corner. But Paul pulling a fantastic lead and possibly taking the advantage there from Kieran. 35, 700 horsepower going against Barry Hennessy in the chase car in the MG Crash Repairs Nissan 180SX. Paul Cheshire has put in some fantastic smooth drifting here today to impress the judges and get this far in the competition, but Barry Hennessy is closing the gap all the way around this first run. It's looking a good run from both drivers, Paul keeping that consistency, but Barry maybe's not going to go down without a fight. He's going to be chasing William Rose really hard now, but William in the little BMW nice and quick through that first section on the clipping points where the judges are looking for. Nice line, and Daniel Hall again making a correction and straightening there. So could his day be over, or is he just trying to preserve the life in that engine in order to be able to try? V10 Viper powered S15 versus the 1JZ of Wayne Keeber's Toyota Sora as they go through that first corner. David leads, but Wayne is close behind. However, slowing through that hairpin where David is using the power of that V10 Viper to pull a good gap on Wayne Keeber. The judges will have seen that, and I'm sure David. Vulcan tyres R32 going up against Team Jack Speed's Shane O'Sullivan as they enter that first corner. Both drivers on the qualifying line, good proximity, but Shane O'Sullivan making a huge error there that will no doubt give the advantage to Matt Carter on this first run as both drivers head into that final corner. Shane does everything he can to try and catch up. Our first semi-final, Christian Lewis from It's a Drift Life, the lead car. David Wartworth in the V10 Viper closing the door, but a couple of corrections from both drivers as they straighten up that hill. As they get around that hairpin corner, starting to tidy things up a little bit. Christian Lewis perhaps with a slight advantage there on the clipping zone. We'll have to wait and see what the second run's in store for these guys.
Down the start line and third gear, fourth gear, initiation with the handbrake. Martin Batty using a bit of weight transfer just to get the back of that S15 sideways. Stephen Biagioni there, just clipping the inside corner. Martin Batty using the perfect line, and you can see the drivers running absolutely on the limit and are very, very close to an off-track excursion.
Number two, so here we go, Simon Perry is the lead car. Frederick Asbo into the chase car, getting extremely close to Simon Perry there as Simon Perry runs a wide line that the judges didn't want to see him run that line, and sticking to the lines we see Frederick Asbo in that GT86 all over Simon Perry around this final bend. Fantastic driving from Asbo, that puts him through into the final battle as he changes position, and James Fuller with exactly the same initiation there with Shane Lynch, and he is all over that S15 as they make their way around the final bends. And James Fuller is looking absolutely fantastic in this, and that gives James Fuller a chance to compete in the final for the Super Pro class.
Top qualifier here at Liddon Hill, and as you can see, fantastic entry from Mark Looney, starting to pull a gap already from Mark Huxley. This, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly why Mark took top spot during qualifying. As they go down the hill, Mark Looney extending that gap massively from Mark Huxley. He's going to get the advantage here on this run. Gaz Taylor in the Team Ramp Style S14A going up against Dan Firminger in the V8 Volvo 340, a car that has become very popular with the drivers despite this only being its first event in the BDC. So Dan is the chase car, close proximity, but Gaz proving to be a force to be reckoned with in this Pro class. He's putting in a good run. This could be either way, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have to find out what the judges see, but first of all we'll have to see this. Mucha becomes the lead car, Richard Grimrod. What can he do? Everything to play for, and he's getting up really close to Martin Mucha through that first corner as they transition past that wall, which is very close to where the drivers are drifting. And Martin Mucha is putting in a nice tidy run, but Richard Grimrod, good proximity, and I suspect will move through into the final. Into our final, Jay Green in the green S13 going up against Paul Cheshire. So Paul in the G35 is chasing Jay. Jay came first here at round one in the Pro class, lovely and tight through that clipping box. You can see how that's really working for the judges and both drivers here at this event. So far a good final. We'll have to wait and see what in his BMW turbo powered Nissan S14A. These guys, some of the best drivers in and around Europe, as Mike Marshall leads into the first corner, makes a slight error, allowing Jack Shanahan to almost rub the rear quarter of Mike Marshall. As they go down the hill into the final corner, Jack negotiates his way through the smoke. What a fantastic run. Up against David Warworth as they flick it into that first corner. A great initiation from Sully, but David Warworth running a wheel on the curb there. It's going to be marked down a little bit by the judges, but both drivers nice and tight around that hairpin corner as they head to the wall. A nudge there from David Warworth. He'll be penalised by the judges, putting him off clip on that final section too.
That, and he did confirm that David did in fact have a wheel off track, giving the win to Martin. We are straight into the second of the semi-finals. Matt Carter in the Falcon-sponsored R32 with Stephen Biaggioni in the Monster S13. Really up close and personal through that final turn. These conditions not phasing these drivers. These are, of course, the Super Pro class.
So we see him initiate into the first corner. Frederick Asbo is trying to get that car as close as possible to that S15 of Paul Smith. Paul Smith just putting one wheel over the inside of the track in that first corner, so the judges will mark him down for that. You can see Paul Smith opening up that smoke screen as Frederick Asbo is locking up those front brakes as he's using the left foot. And down to the second battle now, so they're going to switch around. Mark Huxley is known to be driving this hill very, very fast. So into the first corner they go. Nice big initiation there from both drivers as they make their way down the hill. Again, Remo there with a little bit more angle than Mark Huxley. A lot more consistent than Marky was there, so that gives him the progression into the semi-finals.
Jay Green's going to chase him into that first corner. Good initiation again from both drivers, but an error from Jay White forcing him into the gravel and throwing the run away to Jay Green. Jay Green's just got to continue that drift. Meanwhile, Jay White is back on the track. Jay Green just needs to make it cleanly through this final section without an error to gain a clean sheet. And a spin from Jay Green. The ex-teammates Shane Lynch in the Jap Speed Monster S15 going up against Stephen Bagsy Biaggioni in the Acorn Motorsport S13, and it's a fantastic chase run from Bagsy here. Shane's going to have to push it around the corner and he backs off. A problem there with Shane, causing Bagsy to collide into the back. You can see the light of Shane Lynch hanging there just out the back of the car. Shane's going to make his way round Mark Huxley with the SR20 powered Toyota Celica. Is going to be foot to the metal with Shane O'Sullivan powering behind, and he drops a wheel, Mark Huxley, and it sent him off the track. Mark Huxley is not going to recover from dropping that wheel off, giving the result to Shane O'Sullivan. A great shame, as Mark Huxley, having built that retro car, really getting tyres. Going up against Paul Cheshire, who we saw earlier. Paul qualified to compete in the Super Pro class here at the event, and is going to try and work his magic now against Simon Perry, but Simon Perry, a very experienced driver in the BDC. Can Paul Cheshire make it work? Simon pulls a little bit of a gap there from Paul, but it's first corner. It looks like there may be a problem from Brian as he seemed to go very slow, and some huge corrections. Brian seems to be struggling with the car, and Mike has just backed off a little bit, allowing some room. Mike just needs to put in a safe run to keep that advantage from that first battle to take the win and progress into our semi-final. Rod as the lead car, going up against Adam Whedon now in the S14A. So Richard Grindrod already pulling a lead as both drivers are on the clipping point. Nice and tight on the white boxes, but Richard Grindrod taking a good line. Adam Whedon chasing him to the best of his ability, and it looks like the sun's coming out. We may see a track drying up, but at the moment it is still very